Hey everybody, what's up? So this is part 2 of my Pokemon video. Part 1, I talk about the anime and the cards, and here in part 2, we're talking about the games and the community. You can watch them separate, watch one, watch the other. Up to you. Watch them both. That's what I want from you. Anyway, enjoy part 2. I grew up on Gens 1, 2, and 3 with the Pokemon anime, but Gen 4 was my first set of Pokemon games. My cousin did have a copy of Pokemon Sapphire on his Game Boy that he would let me play from time to time, but my first real experience with a Pokemon game was Pokemon Diamond. I genuinely can't remember which starter I picked as a kid because all 3 of Gen 4 starters are absolutely goated. Turtwig, Chimchar, and Piplup are all incredible starters. I think I went Turtwig, but to be honest, I played that game so many times I can't really remember. While for most gens, I usually have a clear favorite. Charmander for Gen 1, Chikorita for Gen 2, yes, Chikorita, I mean that, and Mudkip for Gen 3. But when it comes to Gen 4, I really can't pick. Torterra looks cool with a great design, and I tend to like grass starters, but then look at the monkey. Infernape is also a really cool Pokemon. He's a fucking monkey, and while yes, he is a duplicate firefighting type, you really can't go wrong with that typing. They did 3 starters that way because it works. And then I look over at Empoleon and I'm just losing my mind because my 3 favorite types are water, steel, and ground. And hey, Empoleon's a water steel type. Water steel type is an incredible type combo and it's a fucking penguin. Sure, my equal love for all 3 starters probably has something to do with the fact that Gen 4 was my first Pokemon game. But I also believe that Gen 4 just has a powerhouse set of starters. This argument could be made about most of the starter sets, to be honest. Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I don't think it's controversial to say that these were an extremely quality set of Pokemon games, remakes aside. The goal of this video is to kind of chronologically explore Pokemon throughout my life. And well, the Pokemon games came out on a timeline, so we're going to talk about them chronologically, and with each game we're going to talk about a few different aspects that are related to that game. Some things we'll talk about are specific to that generation, and others aren't. So let's finally specifically talk about Pokemon Diamond. Honestly, out of all the 2D Pokemon games, I think I won the jackpot with the first games to start with. Red and Blue are the first games and great in their own right, but they are filled with bugs and issues. Gen 2 has some nice qualities to it, but the balancing is absolutely fucked in that generation, and they limit a lot of Generation 2's coolest Pokemon to the post-game. Gen 3 fixes most of these issues, but they don't have the physical special split yet. Gen 4 lacked bugs, had great balancing, and had quality of life changes like items and this physical special split. For those who don't know, until Gen 4, all moves of one type were either physical or special. Take Surf and Waterfall for example. Today, they're both water type moves, but Waterfall is physical and Surf is special. This matters because physical attacks use the attack stat and special attack use the special attack stat. Gen 3 and before though had all water type moves as special moves. Having a variety of physical and special moves related to each type allows more Pokemon to be viable and usable. Take Pokemon like Crawdaunt for example. I actually really like this Pokemon, but they kind of fucked my mans over by giving him a really huge attack stat, but then giving him a water dark typing. Both of these types were special in Gen 3. This meant that if you wanted to use a water or dark type move on Crawdaunt to get the same type attack bonus, you'd have to sacrifice using his incredible 120 attack stat. After the split, it gave Pokemon like Crawdaunt a lot more viability and allowed them to use water and dark type moves with their best attack stat. I think the games could have been balanced well on the old typing system. Take for example the Rom hack Emerald Kaizo. It's a very challenging ROM hack, but has been balanced around this old typing system. So it definitely can be done, but I think the physical and special split is far more intuitive when it comes to building and playing a game. Gen 4 is more than just a physical special split, of course. You have your typical Pokemon experience with the gyms and the evil team and all that, but what I want to talk about is actually the contests. Yes, contests. I fucking loved contests. I really wish the contests were explored more in the Gen 4 style of contests. Shitty copycats like Pokestar Studios can suck my dick. I actually tryharded as a kid to win contests. If I remember right, on my original run of Pokemon Diamond, I got my Lucario to win a Master Rank Tough contest. I liked contests, but they are a little gay, so young me had to use the tough and cool Pokemon only. I didn't actually think that, but I do remember being embarrassed a little bit that I liked contests. The first section of the contest is the dress up part. I would always just try to make my Pokemon look as wild as possible. I remember I did have a strategy that would normally get me a shit ton of hearts, but I don't remember what it was. The next section was the rhythm section. You just have to hit some buttons on the beat. It was simple, but it's also pretty short, so I always love this little part. The final part is what I like the most about contests. Your Pokemon use moves to impress the judges, and under certain conditions, they'll give your Pokemon mega points. I love trying to make a moveset and strategize on the best combination of moves. It's just like building a moveset for a battle, but different because the moves aren't doing damage, but instead earning hearts. Some are basic, like earn 3 hearts, but others have risk and reward elements involved. Others are built to hurt the other player's points and things in that realm. While Pokemon battles are interesting because of the variety of Pokemon you can have, most of the moves they can use are pretty similar. This move does water type damage, this move does bug type damage, this move just buffs something. The moves definitely add a factor to Pokemon battles and to the strategy, but in a Pokemon contest they have to add much more. You only have one Pokemon in a contest, so in turn that Pokemon's moves need to be more interesting in order to make a Pokemon contest fun. And they do that well. There are quite a few different approaches you can take when entering a contest. I would love to see contests come back in the Gen 4 style, but to be honest, I'm not holding my breath. The other part I played the fuck out of as a kid was the Underground. I don't have as much to say about the Underground other than it's cool. It was fun to explore and dig around looking for fossils and evolution stones. I really loved Cranidos because I found the fossil in the Underground pretty early on during my first playthrough of the game. That Rampardos was part of my final Elite Four team. I also had a nice base in the Underground. I filled that place with traps. I really don't think this concept needs to come back, but I'm glad it was in Gen 4. I had a lot of fun with it as a kid. So what else to talk about from Gen 4? Well, Cynthia, of course. It's no debate that Cynthia is one of the hardest battles in Pokemon, and she is personally my favorite champion. I love Cynthia's team. You have the insanely bulky Milotic, a Pokemon I've always loved but never actually used in-game because of how much work it takes to get a Feebas. She has a Spiritomb who in Gen 4 has no weaknesses. She is pro furry with the awesome Pokemon that is Lucario. And of course, her iconic Garchomp that most definitely swept some of your teams. Her other Pokemon are cool too, but these 4 were the ones I feared as a kid. I remember when I was finally able to beat Cynthia. I had reached her twice before and lost both times. I don't remember how the final battle went, but after I won, I do remember how I felt. I was on a family trip at the time and was hiding in the basement of my cousin's house trying to beat Cynthia when I finally won. Once those credits roll, I started to cry. I was so proud of myself. I finally had beaten Cynthia. I must have been only 7 or 8 at the time, but I still remember this moment pretty vividly. Pokemon was also the first game to make me cry. What a great memory. I also have a lot of great memories exploring the side areas in Diamond and Pearl. Things like Iron Island and Stark Mountain. I get that they're not everyone's favorite, and admittedly Stark Mountain is a little long, but as a kid, exploring these areas was really cool. My favorite area to explore was where you found Giratina in Diamond and Pearl. In Platinum, you get to venture through the Distortion World, which is also super cool, and at the end you get to catch Giratina. But in Diamond and Pearl, you just get this weird little side area that you have to explore through until you can find Giratina. It was really cool and interesting and just always amazed me. If it's not clear, I have a lot of nostalgia and love for the Gen 4 games, but there's another set of Gen 4 games that I haven't mentioned yet. Oh yes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Well, I never got to beat Heart Gold. When I was 14ish, I wanted to finally play Heart Gold and Soul Silver, so I bought a copy of Heart Gold from a buddy of mine. I managed to get to Claire when I found out that my friend actually stole this copy of Heart Gold from his brother, who I was also friends with. So I had to give the game back and never got my money back. It would be impossible for me to get a copy of Heart Gold for 20 bucks today, sadly. Honestly, Johto games for me are cursed. So I've played Pokemon Gold before, kind of. I traded my Diamond copy to a friend of mine in exchange for his Game Boy Color with Gold. We were just trading to play the other game and then trade back afterwards. My mom didn't like this and ended the trade when she found out a few days in. That's why I never finished it. Point of all this is when I started Pokemon Gold, before I got Pokeballs, I ran into my first natural shiny. A shiny Caterpie, and I had no Pokeballs. Pokemon Gold made my 8-year-old ass run from his first shiny Pokemon. Fuck you, Pokemon Gold. Generation 5 is my favorite generation of Pokemon. I've been a Gen 1 lover from day one. 11-year-old me was insanely frustrated with all the hate the games got at launch. It's nice now that the Pokemon community tends to look back on these games with nostalgia, but at the same time, it is a little frustrating. In this section, I hope to explore some of the criticisms laid at Generation 5, while also writing a mini love letter to Gen 5. I worked and did odd jobs in order to afford Pokemon Black, and when I was finally able to buy it, I was so proud. 11-year-old me set out on his Sigma grind set and came out of it with a copy of Pokemon Black. Let's talk about Gen 5. Let's talk about the starters. I like the Gen 5 starters, and while Gen 5 is my favorite overall, I feel like the starters could have been a little bit better in a couple ways. First, and obviously, not have a third firefighting type in a row. I like the Tepig line personally, but it's super redundant. Let's get some more creative types in here, please. In the same vein, it really hurts that Superior and Samurott are both mono types. Mono versus dual typing has its pros and cons, but for starters, I think monotyping is pretty boring. It's the biggest reason why Meganium sucks so much. They could fix Meganium by just giving it the fairy type. It gives that Pokemon a much more niche role and elevates them above the other monotype Pokemon. They did give Samurott this treatment in Legends Arceus. Water Dark is a super cool type, and there is a lot less Water Dark types when compared to mono water types. I hope Superior gets this treatment someday. I'm not sure if it needs it as much compared to the other monotype starters, because Superior does get moves like Coil that set it apart, but that really is my main issue with the Unova starters. They just feel a little repetitive in the typing department. I do love the designs, even Emboar. I also really liked how you get the starters. It was kind of fun to have them delivered to your home in the Pokemon world and then battle with them in your own room. I also love how the room is destroyed afterwards. It's cute. The people you battle in that room are Bianca and Sharon, your two rivals. I think the dual rivals in Pokemon Black works pretty well. Unlike other games, Bianca and Sharon are both memorable characters. Bianca even has a character arc with her parents coming to accept her adventurous spirit in the story. You could say Sharon has a character arc too, as he comes to learn that he wants to be a gym leader and then becomes one in the sequel games. I didn't find them overwhelming either. You do battle them both semi-close to each other at times, but it never really felt like you were constantly bombarded by rival battles. I personally love rival battles because they tend to be more challenging trainers in the game because they get better built teams. So having two trainers that match your level and grow throughout the game with you was really appreciated by me. One thing that people criticized Pokemon Black and White for at first, but later came to love it for, is its more involved story. The games have elements that past games just lacked. Things like the character moment Bianca has with her father, Team Plasma and N's much more direct involvement with the player, and the fact that you don't get to fight the champion after beating the Elite Four. N already did. So your final battle is N and Ghetsis, not the champion Alder. I personally loved this twist. The tone and the more philosophical themes explored in Black and White are right up my alley as well. I love that N kind of follows you through the story, and while it's pretty clear he's probably a bad guy from the start, N really feels like a friend to the player character. N is looking to connect with fellow trainers who love their Pokemon, and well, he connects with you. N can feel that you care for your Pokemon on another level just like him. This makes him very intrigued by the player, and so your encounters with him really feel meaningful. There's no antagonism when speaking with N. N's farewell is my favorite moment in the games. After beating the bad guys, N says goodbye to you, and it really feels like N is saying goodbye to a friend. When he says he hopes to meet and battle again someday, it feels genuine. The music that plays in this moment is called N's Farewell, and it's my absolute favorite piece of music from any Pokemon game. Do yourself a favor and listen to N's Farewell. It's such an insanely beautiful piano piece. It still gives me chills. The music in Black and White as a whole is just superb. Take Driftvale City for example. Absolute bop. Honestly, this is something I could talk about with any Pokemon game. Pokemon's music just absolutely slaps. Now, like I mentioned, some didn't love Pokemon Black and White at launch. I found three main veins of criticism that people levied at Pokemon Black and White. First, let's start with the main one that people criticize the games for, and that's of course the Pokemon designs. Every generation has its shit Pokemon designs, and Pokemon Black and White is no different. I think the best way to talk about this is just to straight up address the Pokemon that get criticized the most in Generation 5, and then maybe compare them to some older Pokemon. There are 3 Pokemon from Gen 5 that get the most hate. And the one that gets the most hate is indeed the ice cream cone. So yeah, this Pokemon is just floating ice monsters shaped like ice cream cones. I get it. It's silly, sure. People give Klefki the same shit that they give Vanilluxe, honestly. It's definitely a design that could have been done better, but let me ask you, how is this different from Solrock and Lunatone? Both of these Pokemon are just shaped like their name. Is that creative? I like these Pokemon just like I like Vanilluxe, but my point is, I don't really see a design difference here. Solrock is just a sun-shaped rock that floats, Lunatone is just a moon-shaped rock that floats, and Vanilluxe is just a piece of ice shaped like an ice cream cone that floats. You're allowed to not like the Vanilluxe line, but be honest with yourself and admit that there really isn't much of a design philosophy difference there. I think the only meaningful difference is that Vanilluxe is shaped like an ice cream cone, which is just a bit sillier. But they shaped it like that because it's an ice type. It's not like they're unrelated here. Pokemon have been making designs that are similar to the name or type of the Pokemon for years. Vanilluxe is really no different. The next Pokemon I see get the most hate is Garbador. The main thing said about it is it's a lazy design and it's ugly. But I don't see how it's lazy. Come on, look at Muck. Their name is Muck and it's literally just a living pile of sewage. Garbador is exactly the same. Garbador is living garbage, so they made it living garbage. Exactly the same design philosophy as Muck. Also, on another point, you're 100% right, it's ugly as sin. But that's the point! It's a living, monstrous pile of garbage. I wouldn't expect anything less than an ugly monstrosity. What makes a bad design in my mind is not if a design is ugly, but if a design lacks character and memorability. And I think Garbador has plenty of character and memorability. Again, you don't have to like Garbador, but it is the same design philosophy as Muck. The last design I see talked about a lot is Gothitel. People say it's a bland design, and well, I agree. All Pokemon gens have misses, and I really don't like this line. It really just feels like a badly pressed 14-year-old and not a Pokemon. I get that's what they were going for, but Also, why the hell is it just Psychic type? The whole point of the design is that it's Goth, right? So why not make it Psychic Dark type? That would be a much cooler typing and make Gothitel feel like something more than just an ugly Alakazam. Reluniclus is a Gen 5 monotype Psychic type Pokemon that I actually like. It's just much more interesting than Gothitel's design. So I'll give you this one. It's a bad design. But overall as a whole, I never really saw an issue with Gen 5's Pokemon design choices. I think one thing that didn't help was the fact that Pokemon Black and White had no old Pokemon until the post-game. I can see why this would make some fans hypercritical of everything they're seeing. That is actually the third most common piece of criticism I hear about Gen 5, and that's the fact that there were no old Pokemon until the post-game. Not even a Zubat. The sequels did address this issue and added a lot of older Pokemon into the normal parts of the game. I do think that keeping some old Pokemon is a better way to design a Pokemon game and giving a bigger variety of Pokemon to use, but I really love having a region completely filled with new Pokemon. Even if there are old Pokemon available, I'll try to only use Pokemon from the new region in my first playthrough of a game. I'd love to get another game like that in the future where it's just completely brand new Pokemon, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we've talked about some of the negative designs of Pokemon Black and White, but I also firmly believe there's quite a bit of positive, so why don't we address that? There are so many more good designs in Gen 5 than bad designs. We have absolute goats in this generation, like the Crocodile line and its badassery, the Crustle line and its cuteness, the spooky as fuck Cofagrigus line. Both the fossil lines Archeops and Caracosta look great. The Zoroark line has become iconic in Pokemon. Amoonguss is a fun design with his angry face, and it was used super creatively in the games with the trick Pokeballs. The Galvantula line is everything that Ariados wishes it could be. The Chandelure line is my personal favorite of mine. The Haxorus line goes from cute to murderous. The Braviary line is one of the best looking birds in Pokemon. Hydreigon needs no words, just fucking look at it. And finally, look at Volcarona. This intimidating bug has nothing like it in the Pokemon world. I left out so many good Pokemon from Gen 5, but I think I got my point across.
Gen 5 might have a couple stinker designs just like other gens, but overall, the Pokemon in Gen 5 are fantastic.
Every generation from here on onward has its critics, and I'm not going to address every generation's Pokemon like this. But as a whole, I think Pokemon design is fine. I do think that as each gen goes on, there's maybe 1 or 2 more stinkers in each generation. So while Gens 1 and 2 might only have 1 or 2 bad Pokemon designs, Gen 8 might have 4 or 5. I don't really see this as the biggest problem in the world though. I will be criticizing each generation from here on onwards, but please understand that for Gens 6, 7, and 8, while I may be critical of them, I'm typically a big fan of 95% of the Pokemon in each generation. I just don't want to rehash arguments like the ones I just did for Generations 5 Pokemon. I think generally that most criticized Pokemon designs are purely criticized off of personal taste, and not an objective look at Pokemon as a whole. Before we move on from Generation 5, I do want to talk about one aspect that got changed from Generation 5 to Generation 6. That is, of course, the graphics. From the DS to the 3DS, Pokemon got a quote-unquote upgrade. Gen 6 of Pokemon would be in 3D instead of 2D. Holy shit, please go back. I really miss the 2D style of Pokemon. It looked so much better, undeniably so. Take a look at Ivysaur for example. Here is the Gen 5 sprite. These sprites were animated, so keep that in mind. But just on the image alone, look how clean and sexy this Pokemon is. It's crouching down, ready to pounce, and it honestly looks like a real creature that could function in the real world. Then look at this Gen 6 sprite. It's also animated, but just nods side to side. But come on, look how ugly this guy is. It is so static and stale and has zero personality. Gen 8 is the same. I think Swellow is one of the biggest victims to the change. Very regal and brave looking. And then look at this dopey motherfucker. That's the Gen 6 sprite and it doesn't get any better by Gen 8. I feel so confident about this that I'm going to pick a random Pokemon and I promise that the Gen 5 2D sprite is going to look far better than any of the 3D sprites. I promise I'm genuinely generating this number while I write the script. I got 326. Let's see who that is. Yep, like I expected, I'm correct. Dex number 326 is Grumpig. Take a look at the Gen 5 sprite. I personally really like Grumpig as a Pokemon, and the Gen 5 sprite looks so clean. Grumpig looks fierce and ready to fight, and then his Gen 6 sprite looks like this dopey motherfucker. I'll give the Gen 8 sprite some credit. It does look a little better than Gen 6, but it still looks really flat and basic. Generally speaking though, take any Pokemon Gen 1 through 5 and compare their Gen 5 sprite with their Gen 6, 7, or 8 sprite and you'll be shocked at how much uglier the switch to 3D made Pokemon. I really like some of the new Pokemon designs and I would love to see them in really detailed, clean, and smooth 2D sprites, but unfortunately, I don't think that will ever happen either. Pokemon will more than likely stay 3D from here on out, and while I do prefer the 2D art style, I don't think it's impossible for Pokemon to look great in 3D. Gen 8 has made improvements on the 3D sprites, most specifically Legends Arceus. Sword and Shield still leave a lot to be desired in my book. On a more positive note, the promotional stuff we've seen for Scarlet and Violet at the time I'm writing this does look great. It seems that Pokemon is finally working through the growing pains when it comes to 3D Pokemon. I do prefer the 2D style, but I'm optimistic that future games will look much better. We'll have to see though. This is Pokemon we're talking about. Now that I've gotten that little rant off my chest, let's finally move on to Generation 6 and Pokemon X and Y. So, I'll be honest, Gen 6 and I have some interesting feelings. In order to try to explain those feelings to you, let me put you in the headspace of a 14-year-old me. At 14, you are too young to get a real job. That is a good thing. I am not endorsing child labor. So my only choice was to do odd jobs if I wanted to buy anything. By the time Pokemon X and Y came out, I just simply didn't have the money. The games came out in October and I was fine waiting until Christmas. I know some families do Christmas differently and let the kids pick their gifts out, but not my family. We did make Christmas lists and you'd probably get some stuff on your Christmas list, but not everything. My family loves to try to find unique gifts for each other, so typically on Christmas, your gifts consist of a mix of things that you asked for and unexpected gifts. 14-year-old me knew the system by now and I was ready to rig it.
All I wanted for Christmas was a copy of Pokemon X and Y, so I figured if that's all I put on my Christmas list, it would be guaranteed. I spent the whole month and a half of build up to Christmas dreaming about Gen 6. I was beyond excited to play the new Pokemon. So I wake up on Christmas morning and run downstairs to see what Santa's left for me, and I see a gaming banana chair. Pretty cool. Not Pokemon, but still cool. After going over what Santa gave everybody, we then move on to family member gifts. Each gift that was handed to 14-year-old me didn't really feel like a gift, but a box of disappointment when it wasn't shaped like a DS game. And yeah, I didn't get Pokemon that day. I don't remember any of the other gifts I got that day except the banana chair, and while the banana chair was cool, it's not something I wanted or really needed. The built-in speaker is broke in like a month too. Now at the time, I was really heartbroken and upset about not getting Pokemon. I felt like I had destroyed my own Christmas. I knew my parents didn't like buying us new video games, so I should have considered the very real possibility that they would just decide to not buy Pokemon. And that's exactly what happened. They thought we had plenty of games and didn't want to buy a new one. I'm sure many of you can relate. They said the same thing when I asked for Super Smash Bros. Brawl too. It is a little annoying that older generations just don't get video games. I'm sure many of your parents had an issue with you gaming as a kid to one degree or another. Anyway, so I was kind of a brat on Christmas. I think it's a bit understandable because I was 14 and I'd spent months hyping myself up for this. But even 14-year-old me was pretty embarrassed about how I was acting. By the end of the day, I was still upset and disappointed, but I did have a deep realization. I realized that Christmas really isn't about gifts. Right, I know it's corny as fuck to say that, but I'm being 1000% genuine here. While the gifts were nothing that I really wanted, it was very clear that my family put in a lot of effort to find really cool and interesting gifts that I would enjoy. My parents may have had an issue with me gaming, but they still wanted to support my hobby to the degree that they felt comfortable with. So instead of buying Pokemon, they purchased me a cool banana chair with built-in speakers. After this kind of realization clicked in young me, I have never viewed Christmas the same way. Obviously, I still love to receive gifts, but my focus has completely shifted when it comes to Christmas. My focus every holiday season is to try to find that meaningful and interesting gift for my friends and family. So while I was very disappointed I did not get Pokemon that day, I did grow up a lot. I realized how silly and selfish I was being on a holiday that was all about giving to others. The truth is that giving someone a gift that is meaningful to them feels far better than getting a gift you put on your Christmas list. It took me another 4 months to get my hands on a copy of Pokemon X and Y. Remember, I'm 14 and cannot get a job, but my dad does have a tilling machine. So, come springtime, he'd let me use it. I would get business from my local church group, and then I'd push the tiller a few blocks, till their garden, get my money, and come home. Well, I believe this story I'm about to tell you is related to the second house I tilled that spring. So I pulled up to that house ready to till. I offered weed pulling as a prep step with no additional charge because I figured most gardens would just be a few weeds. Well, I get into his backyard and see his medium-sized garden filled with 2-foot-high weeds. The guy told me just to pull up all the weeds and then till them into the dirt. Great. I have really bad pollen allergies and have even taken prescription strength medication for it at times. And the meds I took that day were not nearly enough to save me. It took me 2 hours to pull all of those weeds, and by the end of it, my shirt was covered in blood. I had been sneezing so much that I was out of snot and could only sneeze blood. This still happens to me sometimes today. I fucking hate the air. Another hour later, I'd finally tilled the garden. 3 hours total, and I charged a $20 flat fee. Fuck. He could have just paid me the $20 and called it a day. That's still $6.50 an hour, which is what I made at my first high school job. But nope. The man and his family were gone for the day, and he was going to pay me when he got home that night. Come that night, he pulls up to my driveway and I run out to meet him. My man hands me a fat, solid $100 bill. I got paid $33 an hour for that job. Fuck yeah. Honestly, that guy made 14-year-old me's month. I was in a bad mood because even with the $20 I was expecting to get from this guy, that still really only put me at halfway towards affording Pokemon Y. I've been trying to save all my scraps and change since Christmas, but I was still pretty far off. I had to do at least 2 more gardens before I could buy the game. but everything had just changed. I had a fat $100 bill in my hand, and in turn, I quickly handed that $100 bill to a GameStop employee for a copy of Pokemon Y. I hope I've done a decent job of painting a picture of how much I wanted Pokemon Y. After all that waiting and hype, I finally had this game. Well, turns out it's really mid. Gen 6 is alright in my book, but after all that waiting and hype, what really is a mid-level Pokemon game felt like a major disappointment. I didn't like Pokemon Y at first. I found the rivals annoying, Fairy type was new and I didn't want to learn it, and the game was kind of stupid easy. I actually really like the Fairy type now and I think it's a great fit in Pokemon, but the other issues I have with Pokemon Y still stand. I don't really care about those factors much anymore, but when I was 14, the mediocrity that drips from Pokemon Y was majorly disappointing. There was one thing about X and Y that I did love though, and that is the Mega Evolutions. Mega Evolutions are by far my favorite gimmick introduced in the modern Pokemon games. It was just so cool. All of these fan favorites and even some others got really cool and powerful Mega Evolutions. Some did look ugly, but what can you do? They're still cool. I really miss Megas. I understand the criticism with it, and I think it's all valid, and it's also why I don't think Megas will ever come back. The first issue is that only fan favorites got Megas. Charizard got 2 for fuck's sake. So, in Gen 6, if you wanted to play competitive Pokemon, you were forced to use at least one of the limited Pokemon that have Mega Evolutions. I didn't mind this at the time, but I can definitely see how limiting this is for team building and just general play. It also leads to power creep. Pokemon like Mega Kangaskhan were insanely strong. The second issue is management. If they kept it till Gen 8, we would have an ungodly amount of Mega Stones to collect. I'm sure there are other issues with Megas, but point is that while I love Mega Evolutions, I do think moving on from them after Gen 6 was the right move. I think regional forms are a great compromise for Megas. It still allows for a new look and typing and stats for a Pokemon, but it can be balanced much easier in the current system and any Pokemon can get this treatment. I miss you Megas. Megas made me want to competitively play Pokemon and well, during the Alpha Sapphire years, I got that chance. November of 2014, I bought myself Alpha Sapphire. I had never played more than 1 or 2 badges into a Gen 3 game, so this was my first full experience with the Hoenn region. I really liked it. I picked Mudkip of course, and I really enjoyed my playthrough of the game. Contrary to popular opinion, I really liked riding on Mega Latios. Sure, we got handed a legendary, but come on, riding around was so cool and way better than just using Fly. The main thing Alpha Sapphire did for me was get me into competitive Pokemon. I was in 10th grade in my first year of high school and I had made some friends with some fellow Pokemon fans. We would chat and battle on occasion and eventually we set up a Pokemon tournament in our library after school. First single battles, then double battles the next week. I won both. I was so fucking proud. I spent hours actually breeding and grinding up my Pokemon with specific EV training. I would battle online and hone my team. I really felt proud of myself. I don't remember my team specifically, but I remember my lead on my double battle team was Mega Charizard Y and a Chlorophyll Venusaur. I also know I had a Lapras with an Assault Vest on my double battle team. I fucking love Lapras by the way. And then I also had this beautiful Gliscor on my double battle and single battle team. Oh, Poison Heal Gliscor, how I love you. The only Pokemon I was able to find was my Gliscor and Blaziken in Pokemon Bank. The Speed Boost Blaziken was a main feature of my single battle team. I'm fairly certain I let my brother reset and play Pokemon Y after, so either my Pokemon are sitting safely in my Alpha Sapphire cartridge that is probably at my parents' house, or they're all gone forever. I loved my short experience in competitive Pokemon. I would love to get back into it these days and try to do some tournaments and stuff. With Scarlet and Violet on the horizon, I think it's a great time for me to start. We have the new gimmick with terastallizing that will shake up the game, plus the new Pokemon moves and items they're adding. I'm making it a goal to get back into competitive Pokemon during Gen 9. I'll touch more on competitive battling a little bit later, but that about sums up my general experience with Gen 6. Overall, as a generation, Gen 6 does have some good memories and some bad memories. I think the games are overall both mid, but it's also the point when I was most invested in Pokemon, and I have some deeply personal stories that I shared with you that also play a role in my thoughts on the generation. Gen 7, my thoughts are not nearly as mixed on. I do not like Sun and Moon. Z-moves were a disappointing replacement for Mega Evolutions. The trials just didn't do it for me, and the amount of hand-holding in that game is painful. I liked a lot of the Pokemon from Gen 7, but the games are just awful and I cannot play them. I'm aware people love the sequel games and say that they fixed a lot of the issues the originals had, but I still don't want to play them. I disliked Sun so much that I put it down like 70% of the way through. I had to come back like a year later to finish beating the champion in Elite Four, and after I did that, I put it down again and didn't touch it. If you love Gen 7, awesome. Just please bear with me, okay? First, the Z moves. Come on, these suck. Some of the animations have charm, but they're very long and very repetitive. And yes, only some of the animations have charm. Have you seen Twinkle Tackle? Pokemon, please, you can do better. Plus, being a single-use power move just feels bad. With Megas, you unlocked a multi-turn tool that gave you a lasting effect in battle. With Z moves, it's just one big burst of power and then back to normal. I think Dynamax is a reasonable compromise with Z moves and Megas, but I'll talk about Dynamax during Gen 8. I just really disliked Z moves. After seeing the animation once or twice, I was honestly tired of seeing the animations. I think that's an issue in my mind with the 3D games more than the 2D games. The 3D animations just don't look as good as the 2D animations. 3D processing is more intense than 2D sprites, so I think that's a big reason why animations took a big dip. And while I'd like to believe that, 3D sprites were animated more creatively in Pokemon Stadium when compared to a lot of modern 3D move animations. I do think Gen 8 made improvements in that department, but to be honest, 3D move animations still don't compare to the style and flair that a lot of 2D move animations have. On top of not really enjoying the look of Z moves, I felt like they added an ungodly amount of time to the battle because of how long the animation took. I actively just didn't use the Z moves because whenever I did, I would just get frustrated. Speaking of frustrating, fuck the pacing of Sun and Moon. I heard that the sequels are paced better, but there is an ungodly amount of unskippable cutscenes in Sun and Moon. When I was looking for my old competitive team, I reopened my copy of Sun to see if there was anyone boxed up in there. And yeah, it took me legitimately 5 minutes to make it to a Poké Center because I got stopped by 3 goddamn NPCs. If you've played Sun and Moon, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are moments in the games where it will just pan around and show characters for no reason, and it's so annoying. Honestly, I feel like all the 3D Pokemon games suffer from this issue, but Sun and Moon are by far the worst. Genuinely, I love a lot of the Gen 7 Pokemon. Toxapex is probably my favorite team member I had on my playthrough. But I will not interact with most of this generation's Pokemon because I just cannot play these games. Maybe the post-game is way less bogged down and I can actually have fun trying to catch Ultra Beasts and such, but I have no motivation to try. If the post-game is less bogged down, then please let me know, and maybe I will revisit the post-game. But for now, I don't want to replay or even play the post-game. If the sequel games really fix these issues, then scream at me in the comments and I might just have to check them out as well. The last issue I have with Sun and Moon, and I hear the sequels did fix this, is the difficulty. Sun and Moon was a cakewalk. I really had no issue beating the game. The hardest part wasn't the battles, but instead it was sitting through those cutscenes. I feel like with Pokemon Sun and Moon, Game Freak was targeting the youngest audience they've ever targeted with the games, because it really just felt like baby mode. Why did they add a challenge mode in Black and White 2 only to never have the feature back? I wouldn't care if the base game was easy if they offered a simple challenge mode. All they would have to do is add some Pokemon to trainer teams and maybe 1 or 2 other things and boom, challenge mode. I'm flabbergasted they never really kept this feature. Like, yes, Pokemon at the end of the day is a kids franchise. That is how they make most of their money, but there is very much an adult fan base for the franchise. It really wouldn't be that hard to keep a challenge mode feature in the base games. Honestly, Sun and Moon really killed my interest in Pokemon for a time. X and Y were okay, but still disappointing, and then Sun and Moon came along and amplified all of the factors I didn't like about X and Y, while stripping away the features that I did like. Maybe I'm super biased with my experience with Sun and Moon because I do have many friends who love these games. But the final result for me was a loss of interest in Pokemon. To be fair, it probably wasn't all the game's fault. I was 17 by the time Pokemon Sun and Moon came out. I was a senior in high school with a lot on his plate, and my friends who helped me run the Pokemon tournaments previously were also losing interest in Pokemon. So, Pokemon took a backseat in my life. I skipped the sequel games, so I really didn't have anything to do with Pokemon until Sword and Shield released. Oh, Pokemon Sword and Shield, where to start with you? Well, if you followed Sword and Shield's release, you would know it was filled with controversy. People say that the model still looked bad, things would freeze, and just generally expressing the belief that Pokemon on the Switch should really be more than what we're seeing. Also, we cannot ignore the fact that not all Pokemon were going to be in the game. A series first. All of this controversy is 100% legit. I agree with all of it. But I don't think it was as big of a deal as people made it out to be. Yes, it sucks that we wouldn't have all the Pokemon, but other games have a rotating weapon list and things like that. It's not a gaming first. Plus, come on, we all saw this coming. We could very well pass 1,000 Pokemon with Scarlet and Violet's release. At some point, some Pokemon would have to take the back seat. It sucks because some Pokemon will most definitely get shoved in the vault and get very little love, but again, I'm not sure I see the other option. I would rather have 300-ish Pokemon missing and get a more polished experience as a result. Now, the issue is that people didn't get a polished experience out of Sword and Shield. Like I said, a lot of critics found the games lacking in a lot of different ways. Most of those critiques I agree with. Besides the still ugly 3D models, I think the issues didn't really play a role on the experience one had with Sword and Shield. I think Sword and Shield are mid Pokemon games. I put them just above X and Y for myself personally, quality-wise. I wish the Galar region was structured a bit better, but I thought the wild area was cool. Pokemon on the overworld was something we'd been wanting for ages, and here we got it. Also, I found the gyms pretty good. Easy, yes, but the puzzles were mostly fun, except for maybe the gym that is just a dark alley and the gym where you get asked trivia questions. And I like a lot of the Gen 8 Pokemon. If I had to rate the general Pokemon from each region, I would put Galar above Gen 7 and Gen 6 Pokemon-wise. I think the DLC was pretty cool too. It added in a lot of the missing Pokemon people had wanted, and it's cool to catch legendaries in the Dynamax adventures. I especially like the regional forms of the Kanto birds and the new Reggies. Also, the box legends are sick. While Zacian is a bit OP, come on, big sword dog. Sword and Shield have plenty of issues and things to criticize them for, but they're the first Pokemon games since Gen 5 to really give me some hope. Even the modern games I've liked still had a lot of pacing issues, but Sword and Shield felt much better. Except that last quest to actually catch the box legends. I didn't feel like the story or side characters overtook the game. It felt like a part of the gameplay instead of the gameplay feeling like a footnote to a mediocre story. This time, the mediocre story felt like the footnote. Finally, the balance of power has been restored. I don't have many strong feelings about Sword and Shield, but it did reignite my interest in Pokemon and in turn, set me on a path that I'm still on today. As I started to get back into Pokemon with Sword and Shield, I started to watch Poketubers. Oh man, do I love me some Poketubers. So, I've been watching Poketubers for about 2.5 years now, and they play a huge role in how I feel about Pokemon today. So, I would love to talk about a few of them. First, I have to talk about the Jay Witz. I subbed to him back in junior high, and I've watched his videos ever since. He took a break from YouTube, but a few weeks before this video's upload date, he actually uploaded a new video announcing he's back. I couldn't be more excited for a little more Jay Witz in my life. Next up is Pikaspray Yellow. I started watching them pretty early on in my Poketuber rabbit hole. They do cool videos where they soft lock old Pokemon games that have really insane ways to get out of them. Like for example, fishing for 400 hours. They're really creative videos and I love watching them. Now, this channel is probably the most essential in my Poketuber addiction. They're the first Poketuber whose content really sucked me in and got me excited every single time they uploaded. That channel is good old JRose11. JRose does Pokemon runs in Pokemon Red and Blue and sometimes some other games. In his runs, he tries to see how fast he can beat a game with one particular Pokemon. It's not a Nuzlocke, so he saves and resets as needed. At this point in time, he has a large amount of the Pokedex done, so please go binge all of his videos. Out of all the channels I'm subbed to, JRose11 is one of the few that I actually have the bell turned on for. It's really fun to watch him figure out how to best use a Pokemon, and sometimes the strategies he comes up with are absolutely insane. I have many memories of unloading pallets of heavy shit at my old job, but I had a big smile on my face while I did it because I was watching the new JRose video on my phone while I worked. Good shit. In turn of me getting into JRose11's challenge runs, I started to get Madrybread's challenge runs in my recommended feeds, and I like them just as much. He does more than just Pokemon content, but admittedly that's all I watch. Sorry, Madrybread. I do at least follow you on Twitter if that makes up for it. Madrybread's runs tend to be more interesting and creative than your standard Pokemon runs. He does things like no new Pokemon moves or using Blaine's moveset to beat Pokemon Red. Stuff like that. Check them out. And I wasn't originally planning to talk about this, but recently they've actually been going through a bit of a health crisis. They've been posting about it on their channel community page and Twitter. So while I'm not aware that they're asking for any resources or help now, please at least go check out their community page or Twitter to get any updates, because they are going through some health issues and could use some support. So please send some love. Now, John Stone. John, if you ever see this clip, can I ask, are you okay? I've seen you catch the Pokedex like 9 different times total. Seriously though, you have to check out some of John Stone's videos. They're pretty great. He mainly does catching challenges, and the amount of hours they take is absolutely insane. Specifically in his last video where he caught every Pokemon in existence in one continuous live stream. John, please take care of yourself, man, but I do love your videos. Now, next up, we have probably my favorite Poketuber overall, and the one whose content I definitely watch the most. Pokemon Challenges. Jan is a pro Nuzlocker who does hardcore Nuzlocks of hardcore Rom Hacks. If none of that made sense to you, let me explain. A Nuzlocke is a fan rule set that fans use to increase the difficulty of a Pokemon game. The rules can vary, but generally, these are the rules. You can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter on a route. If you fail to catch that Pokemon or kill that Pokemon, then you cannot catch anything else on the route. You must nickname your Pokemon so you care about them more, and in turn, when a Pokemon faints, it is dead and you must permanently box it or release it. There are other rules you can add, but generally at the end of the day, those are the core rules of a Nuzlocke. On top of the harder rules, Jan mainly plays Rom Hacks. These are emulated versions of Pokemon games that have been altered by the fan community, typically to make them more difficult. Some ROM hacks, like Garbage Green, increase the difficulty by limiting the type of Pokemon you can encounter. Others make the game harder by increasing the amount of trainer Pokemon, making trainers unavoidable, giving gym leaders and boss trainers competitively viable teams, and by making trainers utilize held items and things like that. My favorite ROM I've seen Jan play is Emerald Kaizo. Jan posts edited down versions of his streams to his Peachow Daily channel. On this channel, I got to watch Jan attempt to Nuzlocke this ROM hack for months and months. It was honestly really cool to be a part of the community. It took Jan 151 tries to beat the game. It's that hard. I highly recommend you check out his main channel video about his Emerald Kaizo experience and sub to Peachow Daily and join the community. It's a great time. One other aspect of Jan's content that I love is his reaction videos. He will react to people's Nuzlocks on occasion on his main channel, and a lot of the people he's reacted to have had amazing reactions. Jan reacted to a Peanut Butter Gamer Nuzlocke, and that was quite the watch for me. I watched Peanut Butter Gamer back in the day, and I still watch his main channel videos from time to time. So it was really funny to watch Jan react to this over-the-top YouTuber I kind of enjoyed. Jan's reactions were really funny. To make everything even better, my man Peanut Butter Gamer made a reaction to Jan's reaction. I loved watching this video for a few reasons. First, I had never really watched any of PBG's stream clips before, so seeing him in this clip was kind of interesting. I got to see a little bit of a different side to PBG that you just don't get with his main channel content. Also, PBG had some pretty funny reactions to the things that Jan said. Overall, a great time. Another reaction I really loved was Jaden Animation's reaction to Jan's reaction to her Nuzlocks. Jaden Animations did a friend lock, which is just a Nuzlocke with some added complexities that makes it 2-player. She ended up doing this friend lock with another creator who Jan had reacted to before as well. So, to be fun, Jaden made their rival named Jan in their Nuzlocke. It was really funny and also great to watch these two creators who I both enjoy interact on this kind of natural level. In all, go watch Pokemon Challenges. Now, If you like Jaden animations, you need to check out Candy Evie. Her videos are fantastic. My personal favorite videos of hers are the ones that focus on a specific story or aspect that she has about Pokemon. And this is most of her videos, to be honest. Either way, if you want a smile on your face, go watch a Candy Evie video. You will most definitely smile. Another YouTuber who makes me smile is Chaotic Meatball. He does a mix of the content we've discussed so far, but he really inserts his personality into all of his content. I love it and I love his videos. Still Spectre is a YouTuber who mainly does monotype Nuzlockes of Pokemon games. Great content. He writes a lot of funny jokes into his commentary and they catch me off guard all the time. Doc Z is also a Nuzlocker who mainly does challenge runs of Pokemon Rom Hacks. Kind of like Pokemon challenges. He's a really impressive Nuzlocker, so if you want to see high level play, go check him out. And last but most definitely not least is Wolfie VGC. He is a competitive Pokemon player and a previous world champion. I love his content. My favorite videos are his videos where he explores how to better balance the fairy, ice, and bug types. I legitimately wish the changes he puts forward in those videos would be put into Pokemon. Wolfie also helped create a competitive Pokemon guide site completely for free. It's the website I'm using to get myself back into competitive Pokemon this year. I'll put a link to it in the description. If you want to learn more about competitive Pokemon and the more nuanced aspects of battling, definitely check out Wolfie VGC. Yeah, I watch a lot of Poketubers, I told you. I didn't even mention all the ones I watched and am subbed to. I love the Poketuber community. Many of the creators I watch, I found through the other creators. It's a really great community that I would love to see grow. I know the Pokemon community has its stinkers, Gen 1ers, I'm looking at you, but as a whole, I think the community is pretty great. Speaking of stinkers, we're not done with Gen 8 yet. We still have a few games to talk about. The next games to come out after Sword and Shield were Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Oh, rip the Sinnoh region. I skipped these games. At first I was willing to consider getting the games. I didn't love the art style, to be honest, but it wasn't that bad, and it is the remakes of my first Pokemon games. But as I learned more and more, and after the games came out, I chose not to. If you followed BDSP right after launch, you'll know that the release of the game was a buggy mess. The speedrun world record of the original version of BDSP is like 5 minutes because you can just glitch your way through the game. They did patch the game, but even after that, I wasn't interested. The games weren't anything good, really. They were Diamond and Pearl remakes, and that's it. Besides some slight changes like adding some Pokemon to the underground area, the game is just a remake of Diamond and Pearl. They didn't even update the Ghost Gym and kept the shitty math puzzle. Why not use the Platinum Gym design? You know, the gym design that people actually liked? Platinum had so many improvements on the base Gen 4 games, and they just didn't include any of the improvements from Platinum. BDSP are fine games if you've never played a Sinnoh game and want to finally play one. But for someone like me who owns a copy of Platinum and Diamond, I'd much rather just pop in Platinum and play that over BDSP. So I skipped it. However, I didn't skip Legends Arceus, which released a few months after BDSP. Oh baby, I liked Legends Arceus. I was skeptical going into Legends Arceus. Pokemon battles are what I like the most about Pokemon, so the fact that battles are really a mute point in Legends was worrying to me. After all, I didn't like Gen 7 because of what they did to the gyms, and Legends had no gyms. In the end though, I really didn't mind this so much. I did miss the battles, but the boss battles that Legends has are in fact great. I lost to a couple and had to come back with better prepared teams. So while there are no trainers littering the landscape, the boss battles in Legends are actually quality. I also like the catching aspects of Legends. I've never ever completed a Pokedex. I've seen the entire decks before in games, but I've never caught them all. But in Legends Arceus, that is the point of the game. I liked it a lot. I had a lot more fun doing the tasks for each Pokemon than I thought. I was really worried that I would get 10 hours in and just be bored with the game. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. I put 70 hours into the game and I still go back to it to try to get a little closer to getting the shiny charm. I caught 2 shinies too. A Scyther that I evolved into a Scizor. Sorry Cleavor, I just really like Scizor. And a shiny Lumineon. I had never used this Gen 4 Pokemon, but always liked its look, so when I caught the shiny, I slapped this thing on my team for the rest of the game. I had never used this Gen 4 Pokemon, but always liked its look, so when I caught the shiny, I slapped this thing on my team for the rest of the game. I also ran into a third shiny. Here I am, having fun in the post-game, going around to massive mass outbreaks trying to catch some cool mons. I noticed that I have a Rowlet outbreak. Now I have my issues with Gen 7, but I did pick the little owl dude because come on, cute bird. So I chose to go to this outbreak in the hopes that I would find a shiny. I did. And I'm sure you can see where this is going, but I fucking missed it. It broke out of the Ultra Ball I hit it with, and then I kept missing my sticky globs while I was running away, and then it actually ran away. I was so flustered when I saw the shiny that I didn't even have time to think to throw a Pokemon at it. I shut down the game for the night after that. I will find that shiny owl again, and I will catch it in the future. Even with that trauma aside, I really liked Legends. I would love to get another catch-a-thon game like this in the future. It made me want to go play the old Pokemon Ranger games too. I played one of them as a kid, but didn't talk about it because I don't really remember much about it. That's the same reason why I didn't talk about any of the Mystery Dungeon games. All I really remember about the Pokemon Ranger games is that I have a positive memory with them. I caught a Salamence in one and I felt so cool. And I was pretty upset when I had to take the game back to Blockbuster. Honestly, I think Legends Arceus is the best game they've put out in a while, and I'm happy to see Pokemon moving in the right direction again. Let's hope it sticks. Legends has its critics, and I do think a lot of people's issues with the games are valid. 3D Pokemon just really isn't where it needs to be visually still. It's much better, and it keeps getting better in my opinion, even if it's slow, but it's still got some room to grow. This all being said, let's talk about the future of Pokemon and what I think so far about Scarlet and Violet. I'm very optimistic for Scarlet and Violet. Honestly, I have zero complaints with what's been revealed so far. Now, it is Pokemon we're talking about here. They still have 3 months till release to disappoint us. But as of September 4th, though, when I'm filming this, here's my current thoughts on Gen 9. First off, the Pokemon. I'm a big fan of the Pokemon we've seen so far. You have cuties like Lechonk and Fido, the amazing Wooper regional variant, and the Legends look cool too. I will admit, it was a bit jarring to see the Legends in bike form at first, but I think it's cool. The fact that we're going to be able to explore the world on our Legend is a really cool concept. Just a couple days ago, Pokemon announced a ton of cool new items too, and they all seem really great. The craziest thing I think they've revealed so far is the new move Shed Tail. It's a Baton Pass substitute combo. Absolutely insane. The biggest thing we've seen so far, of course, is terastallizing. I really like the gimmick so far. Obviously, I'll need to play with it and use it before I form a real opinion, plus we don't even know the full details of how it works yet. But on the surface, I think it looks really great. The ability to change a Pokemon's type is going to add so many layers of what kind of strategies you can create. Overall, I'm very optimistic for Scarlet and Violet. I'm going to get Violet mainly because the professor is hotter. I hope Scarlet and Violet keep this positive trend going. I love the starter's first forms. I'm getting the Weed Cat unless its final evolution looks like shit, which is a very strong possibility. If that happens, I'll get Fuecoco. Quaxley fans, I love this little duck boy. I'm just not placing my bets on another water flying type. Honestly, November can't come fast enough. I'm very hyped for these games. I don't think they're going to be perfect or anything just based on past Pokemon games, but I do think they're going to be some of the best games we've seen in a few years. That's the hope at least. Now, if Gen 9 sucks shit, I won't be out of luck. I've mentioned these a few times, but I'd like to briefly talk about Rom Hacks. I've expressed throughout this video that Pokemon keeps doing things that for me as a player, suck. Things like the much easier modern games, the rocky switch to 3D, and the sometimes silly balancing choices they make. Game Freak is a company that is trying to make money. Clearly, the things they're doing are making them money, so why would they stop? Well, they won't. So in all likelihood, if I want features back that I missed, I'll have to look towards Rom Hacks. Rom Hacks are created by the community and they absolutely enhance the game they hack. Most add Pokemon to the trainer teams and make the base games more difficult, but some do even crazier things. Things like Pokemon fusions or building a whole new region out of the game assets. The possibilities are endless. I'm currently casually playing Radical Red, a ROM hack of Fire Red that completely amps up the game and adds all the Pokemon. Then I'm also doing a hardcore Nuzlocke in Storm Silver. Storm Silver is a ROM hack of Soul Silver that adds a lot of amped up challenges. I'm on run 7 right now and I do try to stream it, but that only happens like once a month. My last run I made it all the way to Chuck where I wiped. I'm loving this ROM hack. I think the ROM hack I'm going to play next is probably Vintage White. It's a hack of Pokemon White that completely amps up gyms, trainers, and battles, but with the catch that only Pokemon from generations 1 through 3 are available. It's a really cool twist on my favorite gen and I'd love to play it. I do think it seems more challenging than Storm Silver, so maybe hardcore Nuzlocking it isn't in the cards for me yet, but we'll see. While the Pokemon franchise keeps doing things that in my eyes are silly or dumb, Pokemon as a whole is doing okay. I would love for Pokemon to become this incredibly tightly balanced experience with these beautiful 2D graphics again, but that's not going to happen. Thankfully though, Rom Hacks have my back. It's great. I can enjoy mainline Pokemon games while not stressing about the things I don't like, because at the end of the day, there are other aspects of the franchise that still interest me, like VGC and Rom Hacks. If all Pokemon had to offer was the mainline games, then yeah, it might get stale. But thankfully, the community really keeps Pokemon alive. Without the Pokemon community enjoying these games together, Pokemon would not be what it is today. I'm very happy that Pokemon is quote-unquote still cool. Pokemon is no doubt my favorite franchise. As you can see from this insanely long video, Pokemon has played a large role in my life. From elementary school all the way till now, where I'm a working adult at the start of his career. In this little outro, I thought I would do a couple things. First off, I should rank the gens, right? I've shared many opinions, so it's only fair I make a list. So here's my list. First, Gen 5. Second, Gen 4. Third is Gen 3, 4th is Gen 6, 5th is Gen 1, 6th is Gen 2, 7th is Gen 8, and 8th is Gen 7. Let me address a couple of things on that list. Gen 6 is pretty high up, and I was pretty mean to Gen 6. Well, here's the thing. Gen 1 is most definitely a better generation than Gen 6, but I put Gen 6 higher because I have almost 300 hours on Pokemon Y and probably around 150 on Alpha Sapphire. That was the time when I was doing legit VGC style training and grinding and even shiny hunting. Gen 6, while I have mixed feelings towards it, is probably the generation I have the most hours in. I played those games 3 times a week for 2 years in high school. So that's my reasoning for the ranking. And Gen 2 fans, I love Gen 2 and I'm loving the ROM hack I'm playing of Soul Silver, but you have to admit, Gen 2 games are fucked. The level scaling is absolutely cringe, and what Pokemon gym leaders will have on their team are just straight up stupid. Gen 2 is awesome, but including the Gen 2 remakes, they are the worst designed and worst scaled generations in my opinion. Play a ROM hack for a better Gen 2 experience. Also, I do want to talk about the bottom 2 a little. Gen 8 and Gen 7. Gen 8 and Gen 7 are 7th and 8th respectively. And while I still don't like Gen 7, I still give it a 6.5 out of 10. Gen 8 I give a 7 out of 10. So while they are the lowest on the list, they're not terrible or horrible games. Pokemon is still Pokemon. The other thing I want to do before ending this video is give you my top 5 Pokemon. This list is really hard and honestly can change depending on the day. I know any Pokemon fan can relate. There are so many really cool Pokemon that I love, but here's my top 5. Number 5 is Gliscor. I had way too much fun in Gen 6 with my Poison Heal Gliscor. What a fucking great Pokemon. It was so good. Unless they had an Ice type move, I was quite the force to reckon with. I also love this Pokemon in Gen 4. Gligar is a Pokemon I've always loved, and they did this little guy justice by giving it such a badass evolution. Number 4 is Garchomp. I get it, I'm basic. Everyone loves Garchomp because he's insane. And yeah, exactly. Not only is this Pokemon cool as fuck, but even today with fairy types, it's still quite the force to be reckoned with. Number 3 goes to Scolipede. I get it, Gen 5 isn't for everyone, but I personally really love this big bug. Number 2 goes to Mudkip. That's right, Mudkip is second. But come on, Mudkip was made for me. I love this little guy. It really helps that Swampert is a crazy powerhouse as well. So what possibly beats Mudkip? Well, Lapras. Lapras is my favorite Pokemon. Man, the Pokemon anime made me want this cute little water beast so fucking bad. I love the ocean and saltwater fish and coral, so water Pokemon have always been my jam, but Lapras is on another level. I love Lapras. And that, everyone, is my life in Pokemon. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it brought up some memories of your own. If it did, I'd love to hear some stories. Any painful shinies you failed to catch, or did you love Gen 7 and want to tell me why you loved it? Either way, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Thank you all for watching. Please subscribe for more essays, and I'll talk to you soon. Give your friends head, and have a nice day. I'm gonna